Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For today's video I want to talk about eyeshadow palettes. I was a bit unsure as to what to kind of title this video at first. My initial thoughts were eyeshadow palettes that I regret not buying, but then I thought a lot of these eyeshadow palettes are still available so I could still yet purchase them. So instead I decided to go with eyeshadow palettes I talk myself out of buying. I definitely feel like that fits more my list of eyeshadow palettes. The first eyeshadow palette is one that was, I believe, a special edition Christmas palette, and I think this is the first eyeshadow palette that I really had to talk myself out of, and that is the Decay Heavy Metals palette. I believe that was a limited edition for Christmas, I think 2017 perhaps. I don't think it was Christmas just gone. I remember thinking at the time when that came out, it was so nice with the way that it was laid out. It had one side of more neutral colours and then one side of metallic colours. My only issue with it was the packaging looked a bit clunky. The mirror for it was in the middle of the palette as opposed to a kind of open up eyeshadow palette. It was something you slid out of a sleeve and then the eyeshadows were just there, so I wasn't overly keen on the packaging, but I really liked the layout of the shades and that and things in it. But I taught myself out of it because I believe the palette was predominantly metallic shadows, if not all. I think it was neutrals on one side and colourful shades on the other. I will try and stick pictures up if I can fathom how to do that properly. But yeah, I did talk myself out of that one and I don't regret not picking it up, but if I ever do see pictures of it online of it, I do kind of still pine for it slightly. But I do think it was the right decision because I don't think I would have made full use of it in my collection anyway. The next colour palettes are from Huda Beauty and they are part of their Obsessions palettes. The first one is the Gemstone Obsessions, which I believe was the preempt to the individual Gemstone Obsession palette that she brought out, like Amethyst and Emerald, Topaz, whatever else ones there were. I believe she had the Obsessions first, like the Smoky Obsessions and the Coral Obsessions, and then had this Gemstones one, which I then believe led to the individual Gemstone palette releases. I really like the look of the Gemstone one because it did have a nice array of shades in it. There was green, purples, pinks, reds, orange, literally any colour that you could imagine, but I believe they were all, again, metallic shades. That is kind of how I do end up talking myself out of a palette, because I do like to create a lot of looks from just one palette. I don't like dipping in and out of too many palettes when I am creating an eyeshadow look. So to me that was more of an accent palette, which I do already have in the Tarte Make Believe in Yourself palette, and I don't get a lot of use out of that. So I did think this was going to kind of fall in the same realm in that it was a nice palette to have. I would have loved to have tried it, more so for trying the formula and things, but as a general rule I don't think I would have got my money's worth out of it, which is why I did talk myself out of it. And the other one is one that came in the Gemstone Obsessions individual palettes, and that was the Emerald one. I did purchase the Amethyst one, which I do really enjoy using, but I think with purples they can be a bit more day-to-day, whereas for me greens are definitely more out there, and I haven't quite managed to create a subtle green look. So for me, day-to-day basis, I don't tend to wear bright or greens or blues or things like that, but green is one of my favourite colours, which is why that palette jumped out at me. So I think I was getting it for the aesthetics of how it looks, in that I love the colour green, but on a practical level I don't think I was ever going to get much use out of it because I don't generally go for green looks very often, maybe on a night out and things. But again, that's not a regular occurrence, so I knew I wasn't going to get much use out of that, so did talk myself out of that one as well. The next palette is from Colourpop, and that is the Disney Designer collection that they had out recently. This I feel is one that I still could talk myself back into because this is a neutral palette, and as I've just said, that's my general go-to look, more neutral shades, the pinks and the browns and the things like that. So this shade does have everything that I do look for in an eyeshadow palette to wear for work and things, but I probably do have most of the shades contained in it in various other palettes. I just liked it for its packaging, for the theme, for the fact that it was a Disney, and I'm a huge Disney fan. And it was $20, which is kind of up there with regards to Colourpop eyeshadow palettes, but it was one of their bigger pan palettes. So I would say this is one that's still kind of on the cusp and that I could talk myself back into it. I know it was limited edition, but I do believe they still do have stock of it on their website. I think if it was ever a case that I could see it in person and swatch it, it would probably be another story, but because I am just looking at swatches on the internet, that's how I can kind of stay slightly detached from it and say I don't need it. Colourpop in the UK is only available online. We don't have it in any stores here, which is such a shame, but also possibly a blessing, because if we had Colourpop in our stores, I would probably purchase a lot more if I could go and physically get it and not have to pay the shipping prices. The next palette is one that was contained in the Morphe Jacqueline Hill Vault, and that is the Ring the Alarm palette. This is the one that had the predominantly purple and pink shades in. Out of the 4 palettes in the collection, this was the one that did kind of call to me the most. I did like the, I think it was called Dark Magic palette, which was a dark green one, but again, I definitely knew that was too dark and smoky and I would not get my use out of it. But the Ring the Alarm palette probably could have been used for neutral looks with the kind of pop of purple colour in it. I think when it comes to purchasing these, you could purchase the whole vault of 4 for, it might have been about £40, and then I think individually the eyeshadow palettes were £15, and £15 is a nice amount to pay for an eyeshadow palette. For the amount of shades that were contained in it, the rare shades that were in there as well. Obviously there were mixed reviews when it came to the quality of the eyeshadows in there. I think the first batch of these was recalled, and I think it was at that point that I talked myself out of it. When the first batch was recalled and they re-released them, and then the second load of reviews that came out still weren't exactly glowing, that was when I thought, is it worth the risk of buying a palette that I probably again don't need, because I do have those shades in my collection, for it to be not the best quality and I may end up wasting £15. I know £15 isn't a huge amount of money, but it would also be a waste if the quality was awful and I was not going to make use out of it. So that was why I talked myself out of that one. Then we have a couple of palettes from Anastasia Beverly Hills. First of which is the Soft Glam palette. Again, going back to what I've just said, I really like neutral shades, and the Soft Glam is kind of the epitome of the neutral palette. I'm very intimidated by the Anastasia Beverly Hills formula, because from what I've heard, it's very pigmented. I don't know if I'm experienced enough, as it were, to work with highly pigmented shadows. I don't think I have got my blending game quite down yet, so that's always what puts me off spending the £40–45 on an eyeshadow palette if it's going to be one that I can't overly work with. I have heard that they do blend really well, but it's just that initial pigmentation that does intimidate me slightly. I talk myself out of this one because, again, I will have shades that are in that palette in various other palettes in my collection. It's just the formula that I really want to try, whether it's the Soft Glam palette or another palette. I do just want to try the Anastasia Beverly Hills formula, but it's quite an investment just to try the formula out. As far as I'm aware, in 99% of the online shops and in-store shops here in the UK, we cannot return makeup unless it's faulty. I think in the US, if you try something and don't like it, you can return it. We don't have that benefit here in the UK. I think if we did, there would be probably quite a lot of these palettes I would have bit the bullet with just to try them to see if I would have liked them, but because we don't, it's probably a good thing in that respect that I'm not wasting makeup, because I think they just destroy it when you return it, and also I'm not spending more money that I might then talk myself into not returning it if I just like the palette, if that makes sense. So with the Soft Glam, it's a really nice looking palette, it's really neutral. Potentially another one that I could talk myself back into, but as it stands, I don't want to spend £42 or £43 on a neutral eyeshadow palette when I've got a lot of neutral eyeshadow palettes already in my collection. And then the next Anastasia Beverly Hills palette is the Norvina palette. Similar sort of vein, this is a neutral palette with pops of pink and purple in it. I think this was one that people thought would feature more purple in it than it does, but for me to look at it, I think it's a really nice couple of pops of purple and then generally neutral shades. Again, I think because it is predominantly neutral shades, that's why I've taught myself out of it, because I have neutral shades in other collections. It's just the formula I wanted to try. I think out of the Soft Glam and Norvina, it probably is Soft Glam I'm more likely to talk myself back into than Norvina. We then have a palette that I seen not that long ago by Voss, a brand again I've not tried, would like to try their palettes, and this one I mentioned specifically wasn't too expensive. They brought out a collection of what they class as fun-sized palettes. They had one, I think it was creme brulee, there was a berry something or other, and then they had this glitter palette which was called, I believe, Le Macaron, and this one jumped out at me immediately. Similar kind of feels to the Huda Beauty Gemstone palette in that I had quite a few different shades, but I think they were glitter shades. I don't think they were metallics. I'm not too sure if they were pressed glitters or just glitter eyeshadow or shimmer shadows, I can't remember now, but the night array shades in this, it did look really nice, and I think out of all the fun size palettes that were released, that was the one that jumped out to me the most. But again, as with Gemstone, as with heavy metals, I talk myself out of it with it being all shimmer or all glitter, because I knew that wouldn't be something that I would get an awful lot of use out of. I can't remember the exact price that they were, but I believe it was only £12 or £15. If I'm wrong, I will put the actual price on the screen. Okay, nice little palette, and will be a good way to try the Violet Voss formula, because I think normally they do come in bigger eyeshadow palettes. This wasn't too difficult to talk myself out of for the reasons I've just stated, and I don't think it's one I'm going to talk myself back into, to be honest, even though it's not too expensive. And then the final palette to mention is the Too Faced Chocolate Gold palette. This was one, when it was first released, I completely wrote off, because if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I have the original Too Faced chocolate bar and I don't like it. So when I seen it was a kind of sister to that palette, I wrote it off straight away and said, I don't like the original chocolate bar formula. I know this one is a lot of metallics, but I'm probably not going to like this one either. But then when the reviews kept coming out and I kept seeing more about it, I kept seeing swatches, it did pique my interest. And there were a couple of occasions, especially one time when I was in Debenhams and I actually swatched the palette and felt the formula and seeing how creamy those metallics were and how pigmented they were, that I did find it quite hard to talk myself out of it, especially seeing it in person. But in the end, same old argument, predominantly metallic shadows, I wasn't going to get an everyday use out of it. It was going to be a kind of accompanying palette that I would use in conjunction with other palettes that I would dip into for the odd shade, and it was never going to justify the, I think, £35–40 price. But that one was say, especially because I'd swatched it, which I don't think I have been able or will be able to do with any other of the eyeshadow palettes listed here, because I don't think any of them are available in stores in the UK. Apart from the Heavy Metals one, but say that's from a couple of years ago anyway, so I won't be able to do that now. I don't think I can get any others in stores, so say it might be a different story with the swatch. Some of them might have found it harder to talk myself out of them. So that is it for the list of eyeshadow palettes I talk myself out of. Is there any palettes that you have done the same and possibly regret not picking up if they were potentially limited edition ones? I'd be keen to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. Thanks!